Ever feel like history is just names and dates?
Yeah, sometimes.
Well, today we're going to ditch the textbook and dive deep into something much more interesting.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What is it?
Barack Obama's view of American history.
Oh, that's cool. But we're not talking about, like, his policies as president.
No. We're going deeper.
Deeper how?
Like how he interprets history, the themes, the ideas that come up when he talks about America's past,
It's like looking into the mind of a historian.
who also happens to be a former president.
Exactly.
Our guide for this deep dive is Stephen Sarson's book, Barack Obama's American History.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It's like a greatest hits compilation of Obama's speeches and writings, even some off-the-cuff remarks, all about history.
So it gives us a real insight into how he sees the big picture of American history.
From the founding all the way to present-day challenges.
Awesome. So what's the mission here? What are we trying to figure out?
Is Obama a starry-eyed optimist when it comes to history?
Or is he more of a nuanced historian?
Does his view hold up when we really examine it?
Those are great questions.
And that's what we're here to unpack.
Sounds like fun.
So to get started, I think we need to talk about Obama's Common Creed.
The Common Creed.
Yeah, it's this idea that the Declaration of Independence,
Oh, okay, yeah.
it's not just a document.
Right.
It's like the foundation of American identity.
Yeah.
This set of ideals that we keep striving for.
I see what you mean. Like it's almost a faith, a belief in the promise of America.
Even when we fall short.
Yeah, exactly.
But is that too simplistic?
What do you mean?
Like, does it gloss over all the messy stuff, all the contradictions in our history?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because here's the thing.
Yeah,
Obama doesn't shy away from those complexities.
he doesn't.
Nope. He celebrates the Founding Fathers, but he also acknowledges the elephant in the room.
Which is,
Slavery. This glaring hypocrisy right alongside these grand ideas about liberty.
you've got guys like John Dickinson, right?
Yeah, John Dickinson.
Vocal advocate for liberty.
Yeah.
Drafted the Articles of Confederation.
But also,
Inherited a tobacco plantation that relied on slave labor. And profited from it.
it makes you wonder, right?
Did these guys really believe in freedom for all?
I mean, how do you reconcile that?
And what's really fascinating to me is how Obama approaches this.
How so?
He doesn't just dismiss the Founding Fathers as hypocrites,
Right.
but he doesn't let them off the hook either.
It's like he's saying we have to wrestle with this contradiction.
That it's key to understanding American history.
Absolutely. And it makes me think about how we deal with these contradictions when we learn about history.
Like, are we too quick to put historical figures on pedestals?
Yeah. Or do we just ignore the messy parts?
It's something to think about, for sure. And what's clear is that Obama doesn't shy away from those messy parts.
What do you mean?
He talks about the brutality of slavery, the horrors of the Trail of Tears.
The forced migration of the Cherokee Nation.
It's rough stuff. He doesn't sugarcoat it.
So how does he balance celebrating American achievements with acknowledging this dark side? Because there's a lot to celebrate.
And a lot to grapple with, for sure.
Right. It's a tough balance to strike.
It is.
He seems to be saying that acknowledging those darker chapters isn't about dwelling in despair.
Okay, so it's not about just focusing on the negative.
It's about learning from those injustices,
Okay.
striving to do better, recognizing that the arc of American history, it's long and complicated.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Lay it on me.
This idea, individual action versus collective action.
Okay, yeah, tell me more about that.
Obama champions individual initiative, right?
Like the classic American ideal of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps.
But he also emphasizes the role of government in promoting the common good.
That's interesting, because those seem almost contradictory, don't they?
It's a tension, for sure. And a tension that runs throughout American history.
In what way?
On one hand, you had this strong belief in individual liberty, self-reliance.
Right, but on the other hand,
You have this recognition that sometimes you need the government to step in to address problems that are bigger than any one person.
like poverty or discrimination.
Exactly. Or even things like protecting the environment.
That makes sense.
And Obama seems to argue that you need both. You need to empower individuals,
Right.
but you also need collective action working together to create a more just society.
It's like he's saying it's not an either situation.
It's both hand.
I see.
And this ties back into his whole yes, we can philosophy, right?
How so?
This idea that progress is possible, but it takes collective effort.
A commitment to that common creed we were talking about earlier.
That binds us together as Americans.
I see the connection. But is that naive? In today's world, everything feels so divided.
It's a good question. Does his optimism hold up, or does he have blinders on?
To answer that, I think we need to look at how Obama applies this common creed lens to specific periods of American history.
Okay, so we need to get more specific.
And that's where his interpretation of the Constitution gets really fascinating.
No, tell me more. I'm always intrigued by how people view the Constitution.
Especially someone like Obama, right?
He was constitutional law professor, after all.
He doesn't see it as a static document set in stone.
Okay.
He views it as this living, breathing testament to this ongoing struggle for a more just society.
So he's not one of those strict constructionists.
Those who believe we should only interpret the Constitution literally as the founders intended,
Right.
not at all. He actually pushes back against that kind of originalist interpretation.
Really?
He argues that the founding fathers intended for future generations to reinterpret and amend the Constitution
Interesting.
to meet the challenges of their time.
That's a bold claim, but I mean, he's got a point.
What do you mean?
The Constitution has been amended 27 times, and the Supreme Court's interpretation of it has evolved over the centuries.
Exactly. And Obama sees that as a strength, not a weakness. He believes that the Constitution is a framework for progress, a document that can adapt and evolve as our understanding of justice and equality expands.
But that evolution isn't always smooth, right?
What do you mean?
It's messy. This constant push and pull between those who want to expand freedom and opportunity
Right.
and those who want to cling to power and privilege.
And that tension plays out in every era of American history.
From the fight for independence to the abolition of slavery to the civil rights movement.
And Obama sees those struggles not as isolated events,
Okay.
but as part of a larger narrative, a continuous battle to live up to those founding ideals.
So it's not just about the past. It's about how the past informs our present and shapes our future.
It's about understanding those struggles and recognizing that we're still grappling with those same fundamental questions about justice and equality today. He seems to be arguing that history isn't just a collection of facts and dates.
It's a story that's still being written.
And we're all characters in that story, with the power to influence its direction.
That's a powerful thought. But to really understand how Obama sees that story unfolding,
Yeah.
we need to dig a little deeper
Deeper into what?
into his interpretation of specific historical figures and events.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
And that's where it gets really exciting.
How so?
We can see how this common creed lens, this belief in the promise of America, shapes his views on everything,
Everything.
from westward expansion to the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement.
Wow. Okay, I'm ready. Where do we start? So let's talk westward expansion.
Okay, westward expansion.
It's often romanticized,
Oh, yeah, totally.
This heroic tale of pioneers conquering the frontier. But Obama, he doesn't shy away from the darker side of that story. Right, because it's easy to get caught up in the adventure of it all. But what does Obama highlight about that period?
He acknowledges the displacement of Native American tribes,
The dispossession of their land?
broken treaties, forced removals.
The violence inflicted upon them? It's like he's saying you can't celebrate westward expansion without recognizing the costs.
Right, those injustices, they're part of the American story, too.
Exactly. He's not trying to erase the achievements of those who settled the West,
Okay,
but he is saying we need a more complete understanding of that period.
a more honest understanding.
And he doesn't just leave it in the past either.
What do you mean?
He connects it to the ongoing struggles of Native American communities today.
Oh, I see.
He talks about the poverty, the discrimination.
The erosion of their culture and heritage.
He sees those challenges as a direct result of the injustices inflicted on their ancestors,
So he's drawing a line from the past to the present.
showing how those historical injustices continue to have repercussions.
It's not just about remembering the past, it's about understanding its impact on the present.
Right. And it challenges us to think about what we can do to address those ongoing injustices.
That's a big question.
It is. How can we create a more just and equitable society for all Americans?
Including those whose ancestors were dispossessed and marginalized.
It's a question we need to wrestle with.
And it's something that Obama clearly grapples with as he examines American history.
He doesn't offer easy answers.
But he challenges us to confront those difficult truths.
So let's shift gears a bit.
Okay,
Let's talk about Obama's perspective on foreign policy.
Foreign policy, that's a big one.
It is. It's where presidents really leave their mark, you know?
Yeah, for sure. How does Obama approach America's role in the world?
He acknowledges this tension that's always existed in American foreign policy.
Tension.
This back and forth between isolationism and interventionism.
Oh, right. Like, should we stay out of other countries' affairs?
Or should we use our power to influence events around the world?
It's a constant debate.
And Obama recognizes the complexities of that debate.
Does he pick a side?
He's not afraid to criticize moments where American power has been used recklessly.
Or unjustly?
Yeah.
So he's not just blindly celebrating American exceptionalism.
Not at all.
He's willing to be critical of our past actions.
Absolutely. He talks about Vietnam, the CIA's involvement in coups and covert operations.
Wow, so he really doesn't hold back.
He doesn't shy away from acknowledging those darker chapters.
That's refreshing to hear. It's easy to fall into this trap of thinking America can do no wrong.
But history shows that's not always the case.
So what does he advocate for?
He seems to be advocating for a more humble approach to foreign policy,
Okay.
a more nuanced approach. He recognizes the limits of American power.
And the importance of diplomacy and cooperation.
But he also believes in using American influence to promote democracy and human rights abroad.
So it's not isolationism, it's...
It's about finding that balance between promoting our values and recognizing we can't solve every problem in the world.
That makes sense. So how does this tie back to his common creed idea?
He sees America's role in the world as an extension of that creed.
Okay.
It's about striving to live up to those ideals of liberty and equality, not just at home, but on the global stage.
So we have a responsibility to use our power and influence to make the world a better place.
But not about imposing our will on others.
It's about working with other nations, building partnerships.
Finding common ground.
That's a complex vision.
It is, but it's one that Obama seems to believe in deeply, and it's rooted in his understanding of American history.
He sees the successes and failures of the past as lessons for the present.
He's not afraid to acknowledge the mistakes we've made.
But he also believes in progress.
That we can learn from those mistakes and build a better future.
I'm struck by how often he comes back to this idea of progress.
It's central to his whole perspective on American history.
Like it's a core belief for him.
He sees the arc of history bending toward justice, even if it's a long and winding arc.
And each generation has a responsibility to continue that work.
To push that arc a little further towards its destination.
But what does that actually look like? How do we, as individuals, contribute to that progress?
That's a question we'll explore in more detail later on, but I think it starts with understanding our history.
Acknowledging both its triumphs and its failures.
Right, and then using that knowledge to inform our actions in the present.
So it's not just about passively learning about the past, it's about actively engaging with it.
And using it to shape our future.
And that's what makes Obama's perspective on history so powerful.
It's not just about remembering what happened.
It's about understanding why it matters.
And what it means for us today.
I'm starting to see history in a new light. It's not just a collection of facts and dates anymore. It's a living story that we're all a part of.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
Right.
It's not just about the past. It's about us, who we are as a nation, and where we're going.
I'm ready to dive deeper into some of Obama's specific interpretations. I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Me too. And I think you'll find that Obama's insights are both thought-provoking and challenging. He doesn't shy away from the tough questions. And he encourages us to think critically about our own assumptions about American history.
Okay, let's get into it. Where do we go next?
Okay, so, you want to talk about a figure that always gets people going.
Sure. Who'd you have in mind?
How about Andrew Jackson?
Oh, yeah. Old Hickory.
War hero, populist president.
It also owned slaves.
Right. And then there's the Trail of Tears.
Talk about a mixed legacy.
Exactly. So how does Obama handle this?
I'm curious to hear this.
Well, first off, he recognizes Jackson's appeal.
Oh, for sure. The whole champion of the common man thing.
Yeah, that frontier spirit. But Obama doesn't let him off the hook for his actions.
Especially towards Native Americans.
Right. It's like he's saying you can admire some aspects of a person.
Without condoning everything they did.
Exactly. It's about looking at the whole picture.
Trying to understand the context, the complexities.
It raises a question for us, though, right?
It does. How do we judge these historical figures?
I mean, do we use today's standards?
Or the standards of their time?
It's tough. Like, yeah, we might condemn some of their actions now.
But they were living in a different world?
It's a balancing act, recognizing that people are products of their time.
But also holding them accountable for their choices.
And Obama, I think he manages that by, well, he doesn't shy away from condemning injustice.
Okay.
But he also tries to understand the historical context.
The motivations behind things.
Yeah, all that complexity. And it's not just about the big names, you know. The presidents, the generals.
What do you mean?
Obama highlights ordinary people too, the ones who shaped history in their own way,
Oh yeah, those stories are important.
especially the ones who challenged the status quo,
The ones who took risks.
the organizers of the Pullman strike, for example,
Going up against the railroads. Talk about brave.
or the suffragettes, facing ridicule, arrest.
All for the right to vote.
These stories are inspiring, aren't they?
They are. But they make you wonder if we measure up.
If we'd have that same courage.
So with all this in mind, what does it all mean for us today?
I mean, what are the takeaways?
How can we apply all this to our own lives?
Well, I think one thing is clear. Understanding the past is crucial.
Both the good and the bad.
Right. Learning from the mistakes. Hopefully avoiding repeating them.
It's like he's saying history is a guide, not just a collection of dusty facts.
Right. It's about recognizing patterns, understanding the forces at play.
And how those forces might still be shaping things today.
Exactly. And that awareness can help us make a difference now.
He also really emphasizes individual action.
Even when things seem impossible.
Yeah, like you don't have to wait for someone else to lead the way.
And that's where his background comes in, right?
Community organized.
It's about empowering people,
building coalitions.
creating change from the ground up.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness.
Our individual actions can have a ripple effect.
And together, we can build something better.
He's also big on this idea that progress isn't always smooth.
What do you mean?
There will be setbacks, disappointments. You can't get discouraged.
So how do we deal with those?
Obama, he talks about having faith in the long arc of history,
Believing that things will ultimately bend towards justice.
even when things are tough.
That's a powerful message, especially these days.
He also talks a lot about dialogue, empathy,
Really listening to people who disagree with you.
even when it's hard.
Mm.
He believes that reasoned debate based on facts is crucial for a healthy democracy.
So it's not just about shouting each other down.
No, it's about listening, understanding, finding common ground. And then there's education.
Right. Not just going to school and getting a degree.
It's about developing critical thinking skills.
Understanding different perspectives. Cultivating a sense of civic responsibility.
It's about becoming informed citizens, engaging in the conversations that shape our society. And there's one more thing I wanted to touch on.
What's that?
Obama's optimism. It runs through all of this. He believes that even when things seem impossible,
We can make a difference.
if we work together, learn from the past, and never give up hope. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Obama's view of history,
I'm left with a sense of, well, the weight of the past, but also the possibilities for the future.
it's a reminder that history isn't just something we read about, it's something we live every day. And we all have the power to shape it.
To contribute to a more just and equitable world. What stands out to you about Obama's take on history?
Does it make you want to look at the past differently?
See those connections to the present. We'd love to hear your thoughts, because that's what makes this deep dive so rewarding. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep striving for a better tomorrow.